Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for what is sure to be a phenomenal session. I'm Reverend Will Rucker, and I'm absolutely honored to be moderating today's discussion, Strengthening Youth Engagement for Compassionate Advocacy. We're excited to spotlight some extraordinary youth advocates who are making incredible strides in investing in compassionate action in their communities. Before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment to thank our panelists for being here and for their dedication to this important work. As Dr. Seuss's the Lorax famously said, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. I'm so grateful that these folks care and are doing the work of compassion around the globe. The time for our panel is 50 minutes, and we have so much rich, complex ground to cover. So, to make the most of our time together, I'd suggest that we keep our responses around 2 minutes per question. But don't worry, I'll be keeping track of time and I'll guide us as needed. But this will at least help us ensure we touch on as many of the valuable insights you have to offer as possible. So with that, let's meet our panelists. Fajr DeLane, CEO of F3. I stole that from your YouTube. She is a fabulous leader, empowering young girls and women through personal development and so much more. Hameeda Syed, co-founder of Dignity Indifference, whose work centers on countering digital violence and promoting gender equity. And Luke Addison, peace education teacher and coordinator for Peace Jam Europe, who integrates drama and education to inspire youth activism. I do want to acknowledge that our fourth scheduled panelist is unable to be here due to travel delays and shares their regrets. Each of our panelists has a unique journey and a unique perspective to share. So let's get started with the first question, which I think is a great opener for everyone. So to start us off, can you each share a little bit about yourselves and what inspired you to become involved in youth advocacy and in compassionate action? And if there's a particular moment or event that sparked that journey, please share that as well. So Fajr, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the amazing introduction. Greetings, everybody, for joining. And thank you to my fellow panelists for being here. So I love that question. For me, that journey started a while back when I was in high school, and we moved from California to Georgia. And really, when I came here, I was able to spot like more noticeable inequities. And part of that was, different food insecurity and food deserts. I noticed that within, the communities, underserved communities, such as the projects and things like that, when it came to food in stores, they were closer to like Dollar Trees. But when I went more to the wealthier neighborhoods, there was access to Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and different things like that. And I was like, well, we're all people and we all need fresh food. And that really is a bummer that, these communities are like that. And with that, I did my undergrad in business, and I recently did my grad school in public health. And I got to learn more of the research that there is still today systems in place for these inequities. So it wasn't just what I saw, it's actually still there. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So with those understandings, I really felt empowered to say, okay, how can we still persevere, get healthy food, live our best lives, even though we have systems of injustices still in play? And that's kind of how I created Fun Fit Fabulous, of having a health and wellness, initiative and having a mindset and still trying to figure out how do we get fresh food or access to fresh food, because even food itself, like more healthier, can be more expensive, especially in the United States, and junk food is more cheaper, right? So with my research, partner with the SNAP Ed UGA extension to see how could we get recipes that are healthy but affordable for communities, that are here. So I think for me, it started a long time ago in just wanting to change some of the inequities I've seen and try to really develop curriculums to empower the girls, give them access to fresh food, and just living an overall healthy life in the life that they dream of. So that started for me in high school when that light bulb came in.
That's incredible. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that background. And we've got a couple connections around that public health, so we'll dive into that in a bit. Hameeda, how about you?
Thank you so much, Reverend Will. And I'd like to thank Charter for Compassion for giving me this opportunity. And I'm glad to hear my co panelists speak. So, even before I was the co founder of Dignity Indifference, I worked as a freelance journalist. And a couple of years ago, maybe around during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a particular investigative piece that I had published, and a video report with my face came out on social media. And right after that, barrage of comments questioning my identity as a Muslim journalist and my integrity, especially around how is it that I conduct journalism and reporting, was questioned. And it affected me personally and professionally. I was not, I was very surprised by where the toxicity came from. I was surprised by the level of online hate, by the level of comments. And that made me shut down and delete my social media accounts for a while. Um, but the question persisted around what is it that I could have done in as a response? What is it that I could have done in that moment when I was scared, I was shocked? And among other things that came to me as a series of realizations, one of the things that came to me is that, oh, probably I'm not alone. There are probably a lot of journalists, a lot of people who come from gender minority backgrounds and who are also journalists who face this issue. And I felt that there was not a lot of conversations around it at that time. And even if they were focusing more on what the issues were rather than what we could do about it. So, incidentally, by that time, I got to know of a couple of other people who had similar interests, especially one of my other co founders. And we created this organization called Dignity Indifference, where we felt that we could have a space and a particular approach to address issues that arise when technology and society meet. So that could be anything from around online harm, online toxicity, technology facilitated gender based violence, and more. And that's really a lot where I am at this point comes from that one moment of having faced that form of digital violence.
Wow. Yeah, that is so important. And the journalism aspect, I think, is especially relevant in today's age. So thank you so much for sharing that. All right. All the way from South Africa, Luke, how about you?
Thank you very much. Really nice to be here, and thank you for all the hard work that's gone into putting the last 2 days together. And also, it's a real privilege to share this panel with some incredibly amazing humans. So I have definitely got some imposter syndrome going on. So I'm Luke. I'm from England, but I'm currently in South Africa for a conference. So I advance if my connection is a little bit dodgy. Just let me know if you can hear me or can't hear me. So for me, I think there was a definite moment where I felt like I could see problems that were going on in the community I was living in, and the solutions that were there for those problems were not efficient to solve them. So, for example, in the place that I was living in the city of Winchester, homelessness was a big problem.
Oh, and we just lost Luke. He'll be back. While we were waiting for him to reconnect, I'm a fan of stories. I love to hear kind of the ins and outs and give me a good story anytime because it helps to connect the pieces. Oh, all right. Here we go, Luke. Pick right up where you left off. Think he's still trying to get connected. While we're waiting for him to kind of fully reconnect, Fajr, would you share a story around a specific initiative that you led through Fun Fit Fabulous that you feel really did make a difference in the community?
Yes, so I would say definitely my first camp that I did it in Rock Springs in Athens, Georgia, which was in the Projects Community Center. And there was a real launch into my love for wanting to continue this program. Some of the things we did that day was yoga, nutrition, education. We also did healthy food snacks and just showing them how to, come together, work together as sisters. I'm really big about sisterhood and supporting each other, and really started to dream big. So, a lot of the girls that I had were in the projects, but I wanted to give them the inspiration to know that they can get out the projects and they can go to college and they can go live the life of their dreams. So that vision board was so important of like, dream big. What are we trying to do? And how are the steps we're going to do this? Put this in your room on the wall and we're going to get there, So just trying to show those systems of inequities, we're still going to persevere through them, through having a good time, being our best selves, because, we all have this light within us, So sometimes it's just taking a mentor, somebody to look at you and be like, hey girl, or hey boy, you got this, So that was something I was so proud of. And at the end of that camp day, we ended up having a big fashion show. So it was so amazing. I got local donations from like the local thrift stores or boutiques in town that they donated for the day. So I like set it up like, a fashion runway. The girls had to pick out their clothes. So it was so beautiful because some of them came in very shy, but at the end they were so confident and really lit up. And that was the goal, was to make sure they were confident and making sure that they can get to their dreams. So that was a big thing for me. And over the years, I recently was able to partner with the Boys and Girls Club and extended that one-day camp out to a whole curriculum. And now I'm actually partnered with the Boys and Girls Club for this upcoming year for a whole year, with the different location sites in the Boys and Girls Club doing my program. So it's amazing just to see the growth. But yeah, that's something I would love to share that I have done through my initiative.
Amazing. And I love the way that's progresses, because it starts with just one thing and then now it's impacting so much, so that ripple impact. So it doesn't matter how small something starts, it can turn into something incredibly huge, and that small seed does make the difference. So thank you for sharing that. Luke, I want to go back to you and let you finish with your introduction.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I think just as I apologized for the connection, it died. So hopefully I stick around a bit longer. So yeah, I could see a lot of issues with the place that I was living, such as homelessness on the streets and issues within schools, and had that kind of, what can I do attitude. But obviously all the solutions that were, there's just millions of school kids being let out of a building. So I apologize if there's some background noise. So I remember thinking, what can I do? And all of the signposted solutions were to ask the local government for help, go down these roads of telling the people that were homeless to go and apply for some of the things that were in place to help them. But some of those solutions, would take 6 months to get back to them. Some of the issues in the education system, the government would say, well, we're not equipped to deal with that, or we don't have any money. And I could just see how frustrating it must be for these people. You just want a bit of help. So I was connected to an organization called Rotary, and there was a Rotary club in my city, in the city of Winchester. And I got connected to them, and I just witnessed some of the local volunteering and service work that they did. And the work wasn't, bells and whistles. It wasn't going to win any big awards, but the work that they did was so incredible on a kind of person-to-person basis. So they did a homelessness project that reached out directly to homeless people. They recognized there was a big issue with young children's reading ability in some of the schools. So they, on their own back, set up an initiative of going and reading with young people in the schools that struggled to read. So what I witnessed was this group of working people or retired people in the local community who, in my opinion, have done more for that community than the local government or some of these signposted solutions ever have, and most likely ever will. And I think that was the kind of click moment for me, where I thought, this is what I want to do. I really want to help other people, but I want to help them in a way that is useful, is a kind of meeting them on an equal level as well, not always just about charity. and through that kind of introduction to service, to projects that put the beneficiaries first, because that was another big thing. A lot of these projects would say, oh, we think we know what homeless people would like, or we think we know what people with disabilities would like or need, but those decisions were being made by people who aren't those things, and it generally is a big board of white men making decisions about issues, like female issues and homelessness and disability. And I think I just saw a really unique way to help people by kind of being the solution. And that was thanks to Rotary, and that was 11 years ago. And I'm proud to say I'm still very much engaged in that work.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And it's so many great pieces just in that. I'm inspired by the fact that you felt empowered to take action and recognize the importance of working with and not just doing things for others. So thank you for sharing that insight there. Hameeda, I want to turn to you for a moment. What have been some of the most significant challenges you faced as a youth advocate, particularly around addressing the online toxicity and digital violence? And how did you overcome those obstacles?
So before I go there, I really want to take a moment to appreciate Luke's insights here, because I think it corresponds to a lot of work in Dignity Indifference, specifically around centering communities. And then going back to your question, Will, I think there are two particular things. One, that it's really easy to hate. When I saw those comments, the first thing that kept going in my head is like, you don't even know me. How is it that you can create an impression of me so quickly, just based on seeing me and seeing how I look? And second, that the scale is massive. It's not just one comment that I can process and respond to. It's millions and millions of comments. Although it wasn't at the level at that time that it's at the level now, specifically for a lot of other journalists. But I think these two particular things are big challenges, especially in terms of addressing online toxicity, because number one, how do you respond to each and every individual comment that comes from their own individual context, their own biases, their own prejudices? And then second, how do you do that all at the same time, especially when there are millions of posts and millions of such comments happening every second? So I think specifically at Dignity Indifference, what we've done is that we've tried to combine the answer to both of these issues. One, we've looked at each individual context, where these comments come from, who these people are, why is it that they're particularly talking about this person in this way, why do they have these biases? And then second, we look at the scale of each and every comment. And how do we do that? We do that through this one particular method that we call thick big data approaches. So thick is the stories part of it that you were referring to, Will, and big is the quantitative part of it, which is including all of the massive comments. But at the center of it, corresponding to Luke's comment, is looking at people who've experienced these forms of comments, who've been at the receiving end of these comments. How is it that they've felt in that moment? What did they think was missing in the platform to keep them safe from that comment? How is it that they felt that they should have responded, or they could have responded if they had more support? Combining both in terms of countering digital harm and also looking at people at the center of it, and how is it that they're responding to this form of online harm, is something that we've been able to find has effectively responded to issues of digital toxicity.
So I just want to kind of go a layer deeper in that around, you mentioned being safe from the comments. I think the fact that a online comment can wound us so deeply actually speaks to how connected we are as humans. Can you just expand on that thought?
So I really like how you said it, Will, because I think over the past couple of years, we've seen this narrative being shared, which is that, oh, social media has created harm. Social media has brought out a lot of things which were previously never there. But that's not true. we were born and brought up with a lot of biases. I personally know of 10 biases that I can think of in my head right now. And what social media does, or what the online space does, is that it amplifies it. And essentially, you are a society that's responding to other societies in the online space in real time itself. So, of course, at the heart of it, it would affect you, and at the heart of it, you would want others to be affected. But I also want to make space for how a lot of these spaces are weaponized, in the sense that you have online bots that are trained in a manner in which they're supposed to keep those stereotypes going and to keep forcing these prejudices. But I think, based on what you've said, it has a lot to do with how is it that we as a society look at each other? How is it that we can have difficult conversations? How is it that we can care, especially when we don't necessarily agree with each other, but we would want to be respectful, and we would want to be kind, and we would want to be compassionate?
Thank you for sharing that. And Fajr, I just want to kind of come to you, because you have such a large online presence and such a positive personality. I'm curious as to your experience in similar situations, perhaps with comments that weren't kind or weren't supportive, and just how do you stay engaged with your work in that way?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Well, it definitely comes from, having a larger platform. You may get some left field things, but, it's part of, you're going to have that positivity and some people who may not support you in that way. But I think, even the essence of this conference, having compassion, just really understanding that some people may be coming from their own, societies of programming, that sometimes you just kind of have to numb yourself. I mean, I hate to say that, but to know that these people are not probably coming from the place that I am, or maybe they just had a terrible day, or they're coming from a really depressing community of thought, so it's just I try to focus on the good. And there is a lot going on right now, but I also want to make sure that I am being productive. Because sometimes when you are seeing these negative things, you could be like, well, what's the point? But I really was inspired when I got to Howard University, my second year or freshman year of being a college student there. I got invited to the United Nations, and something that really stood out to me with one of the speakers, they said, it's not that there is a lot of evil. There is a lot of evil people doing a lot of evil things, but it's not the Martin Luther King quote. There is it's something about, there is a lot of people doing a lot of evil things. That's not the main problem. The main problem is not enough good people doing something about it. So the quote for quote is not the exact, but it was in that essence. And I was like, wow, that was so powerful, because they were talking about, what was going on. And at that point, sex trafficking, which is such a big problem. And it felt like, what could we do? It's all these issues, but when I heard that, it was like, okay, but these people that are at the United Nations dealing with human rights and everything, they're trying to make the solution, and it's going to take all of us. If we just give up, then we won't be doing anything, and all these horror stories will still be going on. So that's what really was empowering for me. So if I do see something negative, or people may not even support, there will be so many times too, I'll be doing my thing, right? And I'm not even sure who's seeing it, who's looking at it. I don't know, nobody's really letting me know all the time. But sometimes through a conversation, if I see them, they're like, oh, I've been seeing you doing your thing. And I'm like, well, based off my social media activities, I'm not seeing you on there where, so some people may like it, some people may not. So you could either have negative comments, or people not really supporting you, or you think they're not looking, but they are looking, so it's really about making sure you're your own motivation, keeping your purpose at the forefront. And for those that are negative, it just comes with that. And you just pop in, okay? Because that's all it is. Just know that when people are saying those things, that has nothing to do with you. It really has something to do with themselves, and continue to shine that light. My dad always told me, he said, never dim your light. If somebody tells you you're shining too bright, tell them to put their shades on. but you continue to shine, you know? And my name is the Breaking Down Queen. That's what Fajr Malika means, the Breaking Down Queen. So I want to continue shining and being who I am, but I do know that negative people and comments exist, but I have to keep on with my mission and what I'm here being called to do.
Amazing. And thank you for giving us that, because I love that. That's a great name. I mean, just the name itself. And also just want to highlight, you don't always know the impact that you're having. You don't always know who is seeing you. And I think that's so important for us to keep in mind. And Luke, our theme is strengthening youth engagement. And I want to ask, you've used drama and peace education as a way to engage youth. So what have you found most effective in overcoming resistance to youth engagement and encouraging kind of that consistent, sustained participation?
Yeah, thank you, Will, and just absolutely echo all that was just said on the last question. There's nothing more I can add to that. A really brilliant balance from both of you of explaining that there's always going to be hateful people, and then what was just said at the end by Fajr about, well, the stronger you build yourself up, the less those things are going to hurt you. And I think that's some really, really good advice. So really, really cool. I think in terms of youth engagement, my background as a drama teacher, I actually set out at the beginning to become an actor. So all of my kind of training was in being an actor, and my modules at university were how to act. But I changed all my modules after my first year in a completely different direction, which was no longer acting, drama for acting. All the modules were called theatre in education, applying drama, and all of those modules and that path was exploring how to use drama in an educational environment. So, and that could be anything from young kids to older people to vulnerable people. And it was just exploring, how you go in and you use drama through techniques, through games, through its history of drama to have difficult conversations. And one of the most powerful tools in drama, and I think most people do it anyway, even if they're not involved in drama, is this idea of role play, is the idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And it's particularly effective in any issue where there's two sides, and particularly in issues where there's more than two sides. But generally speaking, when you have a kind of debate, agree or disagree, what I would do with my kind of drama hat on, is to assign people either an agree or a disagree, and then encourage them to explore it, even if they wouldn't necessarily class themselves on that side. So they would be imagining. And I think that's kind of one of the most important things that comes from the drama is imagination. So I think that's what helps the engagement, because you're kind of doing something different. I've had some incredible experiences where I've worked with schools. I worked with a school in Greece where they are having a really difficult time integrating refugees and displaced young people into the school. There was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of kind of cultural clashes. But once we got these young people thinking about what it was like to be on the other side, these Greek students thinking really deeply what it must have been like for these young people to have crossed over and had these difficult experiences. And then from the refugee side, for them to understand, why these things come about, like bullying and being scared of difference and change. And that's just one of the most interesting things about the work that I do, the job that I do. And I encourage anyone to kind of try drama, bringing drama and imagination into any work, particularly when it's serious, because I think sometimes we forget that you're allowed to have fun. You're allowed to laugh, you're allowed to smile when you're talking about things that are difficult, as long as there's, still sensitivity and context there. But some of my best workshops start quite fun, get really deep and heavy, and then everyone finishes laughing and being happy. And I think that's what I like to think has engaged the young people that I've worked with.
Yeah, and I would say that all of us still qualify as young people. Just want to put that out there. We've been doing the work a while, but we're still young. And Luke, I love that you use the word imagination, because I think that this type of work requires us to tap into that imagination, to be able to envision a world that doesn't yet exist and to bring that into reality. So this question is for all of us. How do you stay motivated and resilient in the face of setbacks or resistance to your advocacy efforts? And I think we learn from each other and can recognize, oh, other folks, even though they look like they're doing so well, they have tough times too. So I just want you to share something very personal, as far as how you actually do this, not what you think others, should be doing, but like what you do to stay resilient. And Hameeda, how about you kick us off?
Sure, Will. Thank you. I just want to take a moment to appreciate Fajr and Luke. I think it takes a lot of wisdom to be in this space, and listening to all of you for the past, I think, half hour. There's a lot that I've learned. So thank you for sharing your insights. Um, I think for me specifically, what works is when I connect with community members. I remember last year there were a particular set of conversations I had with other Muslim journalists in which we were sharing stories. And the fact that at that time, when I heard their stories of online violence, and I could see the frustration that I had had at that point of time being reflected in their eyes, in their words, um, made me feel less frustrated about the long journey ahead and more motivated about wanting to move forward. I'm a very community centric person. I enjoy conversations. And there's a lot that I learn and I reflect on from conversations. It has its good and bad parts. But I keep going back to those moments every time, specifically when I feel fatigued, when I feel especially apathetic, and don't feel like I want to move forward. A second thing that I keep in mind is that my feelings are not facts. Just because I feel a certain way doesn't really reflect the reality of what I'm facing. So keeping those two, three things in mind, I move forward step by step every day.
Thank you for sharing that. Luke, how about you? How do you stay motivated?
I think it's a balance really of the most important thing would be, believing in what you're doing, doing the thing that you're doing with conviction and believing in it. I think, many of us here and many young people that I work with, are founders, co-founders, or even employees of their NGO or their kind of charity. But, I know for a fact that all of them, if the money dried up, the funding stopped, they would still keep doing it. They'd still step in the office tomorrow. They'd still figure out how they're going to make it work. And I think that's like a real testament to the the belief in what you're doing, the conviction to the thing that you're doing. So I think that helps me to be motivated. I've been doing what I've been doing for 11 years now. It changes all the time. Like when I started, I had no idea I'd be at this point. Halfway through, I had no idea. It's constantly changing, which again is another good thing, I suppose, that helps with the motivation. But it's this core belief in it. I'm proud to say, I love my job. I love what I do. I feel incredibly happy when I'm doing it, and I think that helps me a lot. I think the other side of the coin, though, is I've also gone through big periods of burnout. Working so hard on the thing that I love that then I am no use to it because I've burnt myself out. So I think a little while ago, I had more energy when I was younger. Now I'm getting old, so it's very kind of you, Will, to say that I'm still young. But what I learned a long time ago, and my advice to young people, is that you can be passionate and you can be an activist and advocate, and you can shout about what you're doing and do it every single hour of the day, and that's so amazing and respect. So much respect to you. But your own time, your downtime, your time with your family, your time with your pets, time on your own in nature, is so valuable and so important as well. So I think that I'm so motivated. I do what I do, but I always make sure that I have like one day a week where I just go for a long walk And I've got a dog who I love very much. So I walk her twice a day. That's kind of my downtime. That's when I close my laptop and say, no more Zoom calls today. It's time with my dog. So yeah, it's that balance. It's that dedication, that absolute, like, I believe in what I'm doing, but what also helps is to know when to switch off, and to prepare, yourself enough so that you don't have burnout.
Yeah, Luke, thank you for sharing so much of that. I just have to let you know I happen to have a dog on my lap as we speak. I think he thinks he lives there apparently, so we let him.
You have to show us him, Will. I think you have to. If he's there right now, can you move the camera down?
I will just let him say hello because he loves his screen time. So this is
oh wow. That is so. What's his name?
Pee-wee. We call him Mr.
Pee-wee.
Yeah.
Tell him he's a very good boy from all of us.
He's a good boy. Yes, he is. But you also mentioned burnout, and I know we often in self-care talk about not pouring from an empty cup. I prefer the imagery of being candles because you can light 1,000 candles from one. It's not taking away. So I just prefer kind of thinking that way, but a candle can burn out. And so we just have to be mindful not to go too far there. So Fajr, how about you? How do you stay motivated and resilient?
Yes, thank you so much, Will. You've been a great, loving the questions. And to my fellow panelists, thank you for your answers. Definitely inspired by you guys as well. So I think for me would definitely be having faith and doing the work. And also too, with that whole burnout situation, just making sure I take some time for myself through self-care, whether it be, a day to really decentralize and just get more in tune. Either it was going to a walk or going to spa day, doing my nails, I don't know, something, taking care of myself. But yes, I definitely think through my life, having faith in doing the work, and also to being patient on what God's timing is, and I've had so many different testimonies with that. Even with my panelists, like just be inspired from what they have been saying as well. But even when I started my F3 program, it was something in my heart, like I was talking about it, I think all spring, my junior year in high school, my mom was like, you keep talking about this, you need to get your camp out there, and I'm like, I don't have my logo yet, and I'm like, how am I even going to pay for the facility? I'm in high school. I mean, I'm in clubs, but I don't have a job, and she just like, girl, we're going to make it happen, so just, I think having that passion and then having faith that God will put people in your life to help you, manifest that vision, and even with so many things of having that passion, it really helped me get to the lifestyle I wanted, because through my Fun Fit Fabulous program, I was able to apply to a scholarship for college. And I ended up receiving that scholarship. So I ended up getting the Bill and Melinda Gates Millennium Scholarship, which is one of the highest academic scholarships that pays for your tuition and housing. And it was so amazing because my mom was like, I can't fund y'all to go to college. So, I was definitely just trying to do my best in high school. And, through that work, the work I would love doing ended up being my blessing to help fund myself through college. And, so I think having that faith, doing the work, and being patient on God's timing is definitely there. And just what Luke was saying too, of like, even if the funding runs out, I know people will still do that. I was doing this program without any funding. It was just literally all investment, trying to, get people to donate, and me using some of my funds to rent out facilities. And for this time in 2024, around this time, me actually getting funding to do my program, which is a blessing. But I think the essence of it was just that it needed to be done. I was excited for it to be done, and having faith that at the right time, things will start to align and support you. So I think that that's how I will stay resilient, is faith, doing the work, and having patience on God's timing.
Yeah, thank you for bringing faith into the conversation, because it looks different for everyone. And I think it's so important that we acknowledge that young people are a part of the faith community. Just an important takeaway, I think. I want to move to kind of another open to all question. But Luke, I'd like to start with you. And for your response, please include a little bit of how you feel intergenerational collaboration is important. But the question is, in your view, what does the future of youth advocacy look like? And how can young people continue to be at the forefront of driving positive change?
Great. Yeah, really good questions. And I think that intergenerational initiatives pretty much make up the majority of my answer. For the future of youth, I think one of the problems that I see consistently, I work kind of between two very different generations. The work I do with Rotary, Rotary generally is the older generation. It's kind of retired people giving back, generally. And then the work that I do with Peace Jam and my teaching is as young as primary school. And there's always issues between bringing both together, this kind of fear of the other. I see a lot of issues with young people who are incredibly passionate about, in the environment or about causes, and then they kind of go down a route of, I agree, maybe rightly so, but kind of criticizing, it's the older generation's fault. We've been left in this mess. They need to move out the way. We need to step in and take over because look at all the problems they've caused. Now, I'm sure most people would agree with me that they're not necessarily wrong, but I think it's the attitude towards the change, because then when I talk to people at the other end of the scale, the older people, they'll be the first ones to say, these young people don't know what they're talking about. We've had these things in place for many years. There's tradition and there's this. They can't just come in and change everything. So there's but they also recognize that a change needs to come. So there's this really difficult midway point of like the young people are right, but then the older people are also kind of right. And they're not going to move out the way through force. It has to be collaboration, and it has to be intergenerational work. And one of the things that I'm very proud of at the moment in the work that I do, that I hope can be something that other people can draw upon, is I work with Peace Jam, which is a peace education organization, and we work with from Desmond Tutu to the Dalai Lama, and we have a board of Peace Jam up at the top who obviously make many decisions. And on one of the retreats where there was young people and older people, they basically asked us, what can we do differently? And we just said, well, a bit like I was saying earlier, in the nicest of ways, just being honest, because you did ask us, the board is not very reflective of the work that we do. There are no young people on it, and the focus of our organization is young people. So in the nicest of ways, you're having meetings about young people and what they might like without young people at the table. So very long story short, they said that we could set up, instead of just adding token young people to the board, because we also didn't think that would necessarily, they said, well, listen, why don't you make a youth board? We'll call it a youth team. And you go and find young people and you make your own board, and it has just as much power as the other board. And now both boards work together. So we've now made more work for everyone because there's two boards, but we now have a youth board. And the more that's grown, a youth group, sorry, a youth board. What happens now is when we start working on a conference, that board comes to us and they say, what do you think young people want at this conference? And they now try, and it's taken some work, but they now totally trust us with content, the programs, speakers, and the entertainment side of things, because they know that we are young people when we're going to, know what needs to be done. But then we don't kick them out of the conversation. These are conversations about what we think they might like, but we also take their wisdom as well. So that's a little bit of an example of how I've seen that work in practice.
I think that's a phenomenal example, and so much we could unpack there. Hameeda, for you, same question. What does the future of youth advocacy look like? And I'd love for you to share a little bit about how collaboration plays into that, specifically in the digital landscape.
Thank you, Reverend Will. So I want to go a bit before now. because I feel like meaningful collaborations require meaningful conversations. And the first ever meaningful conversation that I had was with my co-founder. It was just in a moment of sharing about what had happened a couple of months ago. And he was like, oh, then how about we do this? And it's been a long journey since then. It's been 3 years. But the start of that meaningful conversation meant that there was a collaboration between me and my co-founder, Himanshu. He's actually in the audience as well. And I really want to give him a shout out because that meaningful conversation led to this particular moment where I'm sitting virtually in front of all of you and having conversations around what it means to have compassionate advocacy. And I think youth advocacy or youth collaboration is essentially around having meaningful collaborations. Many of you must have had any sort of meaningful conversation with anyone to which it came to a point where you're now here sitting virtually and listening to me. And I believe taking like a feather from Luke's conversation, it has a lot to do with giving youth the space to be able to imagine what it means to have a safe digital space, and supporting them in that process, co-creating and co-facilitating that process with them. Because a lot of times youth have the answer. They're the ones who are the most comfortable in the digital landscape. And actually, they might have more insights on how is it that intergenerational collaborations can be made to make the digital experience safer, more comfortable, more inclusive for older generations. I know for a fact that for my mother, when she has to search something, she won't search on Google, she'll search on YouTube. And the first instance that she'll get, the first YouTube video, she'll just click it and she'll be like, that's the reality. And it's very hard to explain to her that you have to like switch to Google for that. And she's like, why? Why would I switch? So having these kinds of experiences also informs your approach. And at DID, this is something that we center in our work. We believe in co-creation. We believe in the principle, nothing about us without us. And if we're here talking about countering digital toxicity, we're here making it work for other people. And especially young people, we definitely like to center their experiences and facilitate that process of co-creating with them.
Thank you. And we are coming up, this time has gone so quickly. We're coming to the end here. But Fajr, same question. What does the future of youth advocacy look like? And as part of that, I just want to hear what you're most proud of.
Thank you. Yes. So I think the future of youth advocacy is, tackling issues within your respective communities, because being part of a community, the issues that are around. So I would say just having that encouragement that you can do it and believe in yourself. What I'm most proud of is that I think I have the courage, to, as we were talking about imagination, imagine and do the work to make that imagination a reality. So, that's really what I'm proud of having a dream and working to make that dream a reality and seeing it benefit so many people. On the higher level, I just got back from Italy for a policy summit for the G7 countries. And we were part of the Y7 delegates. I was representing the United States. And my pathway was inclusion and equal opportunities. So in there, I was advocating for marginalized individuals to be part of the conversation, to be on the table. So on that higher level, just like Luke and Hameeda was saying, was like, making sure we are including youth and people from marginalized communities to have a voice, because for so long we've been kind of pushed out and a lot of these issues are affecting us, but we're not even able to have a say. So I would encourage us youth to say that we have a voice, we are impactful, we are meaningful, and also to creating that intergenerational respect from the elders and the younger people. Let's not like bicker at each other and just know that we are our biggest advocates, and let's see how we can work together. So that's what I would want to say.
Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, I want to thank each of our incredible panelists for sharing your journeys, your successes, and your challenges with us today. Your work continues to inspire young people everywhere to become compassionate advocates for change. Thank you as well to our audience for your thoughtful participation and your engagement. Youth advocacy is essential for driving the future of compassionate leadership, and it's heartening to see so many passionate leaders already making a difference. Let's all continue to lift each other up, to collaborate, to use our imagination and build a world where compassion drives meaningful change. Thank you for joining us. And as I always remind you, you are not just a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. And what you do matters. So live compassionately. Thanks to all for being here.